to present. This is one of the big, we think, important parts of the semester is showing the work between each team, and we don't get a chance to do it that much. This is a good opportunity. So a couple ground rules. See a lot of laptops out. I have mine out to take notes too. If you are primarily in here to do email while watching the presentations, try to actually pay attention, please. That would really be, give respect to the other teams as you would want respect for your team. Secondly, we're not supposed to have any food and drink in here, so I'm reminding you, as I'm guilty of my water bottle up here. But for sure, if you have something here, make sure it's not here when we're done. Third thing, we're going to be timing. We have 20 minutes per team. Balky will be running the clock and asking you for your team when you want to be warned, because some of you want 20 minutes presentation, some of you want 15 minutes and then 5 minutes of questions and whatnot. That format's okay, you let us know. Fourth thing, hey, take some notes, right? You see something you like, don't like, have feedback. Everyone would benefit from having the sharing. So if you see something that excites you, you're like, wow, how'd you do that? I really like that. Hey, that really confused me. You have the team leads list, or you can send to the team. Share that information. We're obviously taking notes. We'll be sending out notes to the teams by the next class, hopefully, if we're on top of it with the midterm score. But this is a chance for you to give feedback as well. So it's an incredible opportunity. There's 120 people in this room, all of whom have really good ideas about how to make games. And so let's share that knowledge. And otherwise, cell phones and all that sort of stuff, try to keep it off just so no one's interrupted. And I think we're ready. Mike, Scott, anything you want to add to that? All right. Without further ado, Project Rhea.
All right. How you guys doing? Is this all right? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. Oh, wow, that's really close. I am Boulder Tangvold.
I'm Colleen Dimmer.
I'm Riley Peach.
I'm Nielsen Curtis-Brado. I'm Adrian Swanberg. I'm Brandon Sword.
And as you know, we're working on Rhea. Rhea, of course, as all of you know, is a first-person, open-world, exploration-driven adventure game, or just adventure. Players are given the ability to fly, and it's a very powerful form of flight, and explore a long-abandoned city that continues to deteriorate around them. Now, the story behind this world is that there were these ancient Greeks that found this cave system, and they decided to settle inside of it because they also discovered this floaty dust. And this golden bright dust floats upwards, and using that, they discovered that they could fly. And they thought they were blessed by the gods. And they worshipped this stuff, and it was part of their life and their love and everything for hundreds of years, until one day, the glowy dust ether disappears, and everybody falls out of the sky. And they perish. And you, as the player, dropped in hundreds of years later, but the power is back. So you can fly around, and you're left to look at relics. What's left? What happened to these people? What's going on here? So, to show it off, we're going to start with engineering, and I'll hop on the Oculus. Oh yeah, we are developing with the Unreal Development Kit, and this is a virtual reality experience using the Oculus Rift.
Thank you, Calder. Once again, I'm Adrian Swanberg. I'm heading up the engineering team. I think I speak for the entire engineering team when I say that I'm really excited to be working on a project like this, where we've had the unique privilege of working almost exclusively on user-facing features. Very little back-end to do, so everything we do is very rewarding because we can see right away in gameplay how it's affecting the current state of the game. And like Balder said, flight is pretty much first and foremost in our game. It's very important to us, and it's something we've been focusing on since before day one. So I'd like to invite up Brandon Sorg, our flight engineer, to talk about how that's evolved.
Okay, so if you remember from pitch day in the spring, one of the main goals for flight was to achieve this feeling like in surfing or snowboarding, except now you're gliding through the air. So the first thing you'll notice as Balder leaps off this structure and starts flying around is that this ether trail forms underneath his feet in sort of Silver Surfer-esque fashion. And this trail serves an aesthetic purpose. It's incredibly satisfying to look behind you and look at the path you just traversed. But it also serves a very important function in the Oculus Rift in that it points the way forward, gives you a little bit of a reference frame so that you don't get disoriented while looking all around. Now this is unpowered flight, so as Balder is circling around here, he's gradually losing speed. In order to propel himself forward, he has to find these jets of ether that are streaming out from the bottom of the ground and ride along it, propel himself forward, get himself higher into the air, and allow him to fly longer. Now, since this is unpowered flight, one of the biggest challenges. I'll show off the next thing I'm going to say. So one of the big challenges in navigating this space is going to be that you need to get from point A to point B while conserving as much momentum as possible, so that then you can then get to point C. An example of this would be like if Balder needs to make a very tight turn right now. His first inclination might be to brake really sharply and bank hard to one side or the other. But a different method, a more advanced maneuver, might be to shoot himself up in the air and spin around at the top of this jump and resume flying on the way back down in a sort of half-pipe-like maneuver, and he can then turn 180 degrees without losing much speed. Now, the role of the Oculus Rift right now is more of a passive viewport than something that is actively controlling your character. And this provides a huge benefit for navigating a 3D space, in that you can look around, assess your surroundings, plan out what you want to do next without worrying about your character veering off into whatever direction you look at. The biggest challenge of developing for the Oculus Rift, though, is that it is more prone to generating motion sickness. And the biggest way we're combating that is by making the motion as smooth and rounded as possible. You can see that there's this emphasis on these big swooping patterns in the flight, and we've also had to re-examine some of the more familiar standard ground controls. And demo day in the fall, you'll see a more nuanced and smooth jumping and landing motion as well. That all being said about the Oculus Rift, we are also developing this game for play on a standard monitor, so we have the extra challenge of having to develop for two different interfaces and making sure the game is still playable without this added benefit of being able to look all around you while flying.
Thank you, Brandon. So as Brandon said, we faced a lot of interesting challenges in developing for the Oculus Rift, not just when it comes to usability, but also when it comes to the questions of how do we convince the player that they're really in a world. Well, one of the ways we're addressing this, particularly with flight, is with an interesting sound system that we've had to develop in-house. It's being developed principally by one of our engineers, Marilla Sousa, over there. We're designing a system whereby, as you fly, you can hear the wind brushing past your ears. And if you turn your head, much like you would if you stick your head out of a car window, you can hear the air rushing into one ear and kind of narrowly missing the other. So it's done a lot to make the whole experience of flying that much more convincing. And that's one of our greatest ongoing challenges, is convincing you that you can actually fly. Another thing we've been working on is player interaction with the world. We wanted to have a system whereby players could interact with objects inside of Rhea in a simple, unobtrusive, but powerful way. We ultimately settled on something similar to what the Half-Life 2 did, where you simply kind of pull an object and it floats in front of you. It's really simple. It's not hard for the player to pick up, but because the object is still being affected by the physics of the world, as Balder's demonstrating right now, it has a lot of potential for some interesting encounters. In fact, our engineer who's been principally working on this, Mehul Mittal, is already hard at work on an encounter that uses these pickables, as we like to call them, in really interesting ways. The last major feature we've been working on up until now has been our destructible world, or our deteriorating world. So you've heard us talk a lot about how Rhea, the world of Rhea is supposed to be a gradually deteriorating, an authentically ancient world that is fragile. So we're privileged to work with Ryan Navarre, who's formed himself into a very capable tech artist. And he's been hard at work figuring out how best to integrate destructible assets into our game while maintaining realism and efficiency. And so I think Balder just smashed a pillar right there for you guys to see. But we're happy to say that we're at the point where we have an established pipeline for creating destructible meshes where we want them. And we're at the point where designers can simply drop these destructible assets into a scene without really worrying about any side effects. So that's most of what we've been up to over at engineering. I'm going to hand it off to Nielsen to talk about why everything looks so pretty.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Nielsen Curtis-Zaprata. I'm our lead for this game. So we'll be showing off pre-warped version so that you guys can sort of see what it looks like without the Oculus, because it's sort of warped the view. But this is the city center. It's the main area of our game, and it's sort of what we've been pushing art-wise this first semester, and then we'll push the other areas after midterm. But yeah, I'll just talk about sort of the challenges of designing with the Oculus and sort of the design and aesthetics of the game, as well as what we've done on a technical side to help make art easier. So the first thing we've done is design a lot of vertical spaces. The Oculus is great for side-to-side movement, but especially up and down. And so you can sort of peer over these vast ledges and get a great sense of scale very easily and almost effortlessly. The style of Rhea, as you may have not noticed, or may have noticed, is Greco-Roman. We're going after sort of a ruined architecture. And right now, actually, the assets aren't quite ruined yet, because what we're going to have to do the second half of the semester is then take all these clean-looking assets that we have and then sort of destroy them and make everything look sort of grimy and grotty and gallons rubble and stuff like that. Yeah, so sort of the design, other technical elements. You've noticed a lot of the assets repeat themselves, and we have a lot of reused stuff, and that's because we want to be as efficient as possible when making this game. So everything's modular in the most part. So in order to sort of break up the tiling and this sort of stuff, we're gonna later in the game or later in the semester Vertex Painting, so we can get like moss and cracks and stuff all around these assets. So designers can easily just build scenes, within a week or a day, and then we can go back in and just Vertex paint stuff, make it look really pretty, but not repeatable. So to sort of belabor this point, the rocks in the scene that you see actually are just one rock that we've used over and over again, and you can scale it to the size of a pebble or the size of a mountain because we have scale-aware textures which allow designers to just scale them up and down while still having the same texture density. Other things like global texture offset, so if you move the rock to a different position, the texture's going to move with it, thus stopping looping and that sort of stuff and just other artifacts. And then now that we have 3 different areas of the game, this being the city center, and the swamp and the caverns, which you saw earlier. And to sort of vary up these spaces while using the same assets, we're going to use effects like lighting and post-processing effects to change color and that sort of stuff in UDK to give each area its own unique feel without having sort of monotonous reused assets. Baldur right now is going through the market, which was designed by Joe Camerata, one of our USC artists. We've also been working with Otis, Alcad, and Noman to create our assets, so we've been diversifying a lot in our talent. The design for this space was done by Rico Tambari and Esteban Fajardo. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the city. And I'll pass it to Riley to talk about design in the swamp.
Hey guys, I'm Riley Peach. So we've seen the Crystal Caverns, which was directed by Ryan Monroe. We've seen the City Hub, which Nielsen just talked about. And now we're going to move on to the Swamp, which is directed by Pablo Ortiz with art direction by Michael Longley. As we go through here, this space, much like every other space that we have, is really rooted in both our narrative and our systems. Every encounter and every bit of exploration is driven from the systems that we develop and the narrative that backs them all up. So in the instance of this case, our swamp, this is the sunken temple of the religious sect of the society. It's a little dark to see right now, but what Baldur's doing is he's going to be climbing over this temple and using jump mechanic that we have developed with the Rift in mind. Jumping, typically with the Rift, has been something that has brought out a lot of what people can call Rift sickness or just VR sickness. And what we've done to combat that is generated a jump that accelerates in such a way that doesn't bother the player and doesn't give that effect. And we've had a lot of fun testing for that internally and externally. This temple is a big part of that religious society that I was speaking about, and in a minute we're going to get to go inside. That temple, which you'll see will have a really cool effect near the end of this set of encounters, really speaks to the spaces that we want to create, spaces that can be traversed multiple times. As you enter a space, it's void of almost entirely of ether. It's why the civilization was destroyed, was the disappearance of ether, and your job is to learn more about the civilization by returning ether to the area. So what our goal is finding little pockets of ether, finding little relics that will draw the player and cause them to explore and bring back ether in certain ways. Ether jets are small ways that we can introduce it, but we can also reintroduce entire flight into the system by doing that. Developing for the Rift has been a fantastic opportunity because we've been able to develop encounters and exploration methods that would not have been possible without it. As you accomplish different tasks, you have the luxury of being able to look around and see what's going on around you much quicker than you would be able to see them if you had to turn your entire body as you would in a screen game with first person. It's again a little dark to see right now. But what Balder, if you were wearing the Rift right now, would be able to do is accomplish a jump puzzle by looking around him and seeing what his options are mid-air and be able to make those decisions on the fly. Additionally, as he comes up to a puzzle like this, he could be grabbing things nearby using our pickable system and be able to achieve a lot of complex tasks that are only possible with disjoint movement between your head and your body. And as I've been saying, these spaces are traversable multiple times, and the designers have all put in a lot of thought into how the space is going to be envisioned narratively when it's traversed differently. So, as if you're coming in as an outsider, as you develop the space, you start to learn more about this society by doing the things that they would have done and unlocking more areas that are rooted in their personal lives. Right here we're approaching a shrine that has a relic. This relic is tied to the prophet, and there's an entire character behind that and a story behind that. As Balder grabs that, he's able to reintroduce Ether to the area in this sense, and soon we'll be leading up to our main transformation of the space, which is supposed to be something that's rather cathartic in the space, as well as provide a lot of opportunities to show off the fact that everything we have is modular. Finally, just testing all of this has been a really interesting challenge because we've been developing it for two systems, really. One is for the Rift, the other is for a screen, which provides challenges to systems and to player experience. Right now, Balder's rising up the temple here. Yeah. So as Ether is reintroduced to the space, we bring up this temple that was previously something that you had been jumping over and calling over, and now that you're able to explore the interior of. In the interest of time, I'm actually going to pass this off to Colleen, and she's going to talk to you about a few things.
Hey, so I'm the lead producer on Rhea, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of our usability work. Accessibility is really, really important to us with our game because a lot of our players playing our game might be the first time that they're actually using the Oculus Rift or virtual reality technology in general. So it's really important that we